All right, we're right on 1 minute past one, so I think we get started and we'll just let others join as they like to join. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Belinda. I'm the coordinator of Student Voice Australasia. Welcome to our first SSAF student consultation collective session. I'm really excited to see so much interest in this new series, so thank you everyone for being here. I'm not going to take long. I'm going to hand over to your co-conveners shortly, but I just want to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the lands on which we are meeting. So I'm joining you from Gubbi Gubbi land, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and future. So let me start by telling you a little bit about this new series. So when you signed up, you probably would have seen a bit of a description about what we're going to cover today and what the series is all about. So how it came about is basically through conversations with a lot of our members at SVA and also a lot of members at the SEN network as well. So what this new series of events is designed to do is to bring staff and students together across the tertiary education sector, and we're going to discuss about how students are meaningfully consulted around the allocation of their SSAF funds. So we've got a few topics planned. So we're planning like 4 to 5 sessions throughout the year, and you may have seen those topics outlined on our website. But we're also quite flexible for this to be member-led in terms of the topics that you want us to lean into and spend the most time on as well. So we're also really excited to be partnering with the Student Experience Network. So I'll invite Paul or Kim to say a quick hello as well.
Hi everyone, my name's Paul. For those who don't know me, I'm the CEO at SEN. Just wanted to say that it's an absolute pleasure to be here and working with Belinda and SVA on this. It's part of our strategic plan to work with partner organisations that have a similar mission to us. And I know that post Accord, this is high on everyone's agenda to make sure that we are working with the universities to ensure that the SSAF is distributed and used in a manner that looks after students. So very happy to be part of this journey. So I will take this opportunity to pass over very quickly so we can get on with it and introduce Fletcher and Bree, who are going to be convening for us. So thank you both.
Thank you. Bree, did you want to introduce yourself first, and then I can take over?
Of course. So hi, I'm Brianna Jones. Feel free to call me Bree. I am the General Secretary for Flinders University Student Association, FUSA. So I'm like part of the elected student council at Flinders Uni. And yeah, I'm really keen to figure out how to best communicate with students about SSAF funding, best support them, and how, yeah, just better bridge that student partnership with us all. Yeah. Better.
Thanks, Bree. And I work at FUSA. I'm the Student Representation Support Coordinator, so I work with Bree and the other elected members of Student Council. And I'm quite keen on this because SSAF can be seen as quite a technical thing, and sort of the changes to the regulations that have happened over the last couple of years have maybe made us think and rethink again about our SSAF processes. The Student Services and Amenities fee has been around for over a decade now, and that's sort of where we're at as a sector and sort of how we receive our funding. And so I'm really keen to hear and get some thoughts on how to turn what can be a really technical process into something that's actually a bit alive and functional and is a meaningful engagement with students. Because we operate on such different timelines, sort of year by year, if you're a student and the SSAF process, and if you're a staff member. Today's session is with the University of Sunshine Coast team, students and partners team, and the Student Guild at University of Sunshine Coast. And they're going to be talking about sort of some of the ways they're going to present for us, some of the ways that they've been doing new projects around communication or different ways of communicating around SSAF. So I might pass back to Belinda and to Emily, who can guide us through this presentation.
Thank you, Fletcher. I'll just start by introducing myself. My name is Emily. I'm the operations manager of the Student Guild at the University of the Sunshine Coast. We are a fairly small guild and a small university, but the last few years with the SSAF legislation changes has been really impactful for us. We're going through a huge transition. And so the concept of how students engage and give feedback and participate in where their SSAF is spent is really, really important to us and is becoming more and more important by the year as we build up to our 40% funding that we are starting to get from the university. I'll let Bella introduce herself and then we'll get started.
Hi everyone, my name is Bella or Belinda. I am the coordinator for the Students as Partners team at the University of the Sunshine Coast. So we lead with the Students as Partners team and also our Student Senate, which is our student representative team as well. So we work closely with the Student Guild around SSAF with co-designing initiatives there. So before we get started, sorry, is my screen sharing okay? Is everyone seeing that okay? Perfect. All right. So I just wanted to start with acknowledging the traditional owners of the land of which we all are. For me as well, I'm also located where UniSC is on Gubbi Gubbi people's land, but also acknowledging where each of you are located as well, recognising their continuing connection to land, water and community, and paying our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So just to give you a little bit of a snapshot of our university, we are a regional university up on the Sunshine Coast. We sit around 17,000 to 18,000 students, primarily female. Our first and families kind of move slightly more around that 50-50 mark at the moment. We do have quite a high percentage with international and Indigenous students as well, and our campuses are spread quite dramatically. We've also added Adelaide into that as well, but we've got a few different campuses at different locations, but our primary campus is on the Sunshine Coast with our new one on Moreton Bay as well. So we are still quite a newer university and still in that regional sphere as well. So just to give you we are a lot smaller than some of you, the big scale unis that I can see a few of you from as well. So just a little bit of an insights into what we're doing with SSAF from how you can make little changes that'll have a big impact. So to give you a little overview of what SSAF previously was looking like, I guess prior to implementing a few changes last year. So we do have student voice on our SSAF committee. So we have 4 students on that SSAF committee. We have 1 undergraduate student, 1 postgrad, 1 member from the Student Guild board, and 1 member from the Student Senate as a student representative. Our SSAF survey has been co-designed and consulted with students from both the Student Senate and the Student Guild in the past. From 2025 previously, it's been quite a long survey with both quantitative and qualitative questions, making sure we tick all of that information that is actually on the legislation that we want to ask questions about, and giving plenty of opportunities for them to list where their priorities are, if they use certain services, and also about their awareness and understanding of SSAF as well. So previously in the past, we've done our SSAF survey annually. It's normally open for a period of roughly 3 weeks, typically the first 3 weeks of trimester 2 or semester 2, depending on which model you're operating. And typically once that's completed, we complete a SSAF report, which we upload to the student portal that students can access. So in the past, it's been probably kind of, I guess, limited promotion and visibility. You really kind of have to see an awareness campaign or find it on the portal. And then our promotions leading into the survey previously typically focused on SSAF survey is now open, please complete it. So that's the kind of where the promotion's been prior to 2025. And it's been more of that formal university tone, language and branding as well. So with that, what we wanted to do is look at what we can change. So we looked at, I guess, recently this from last year and this year, what was happening across the sector in terms of response rates. We sit probably around that middle average with response rate, but it's still a lot lower than what we'd actually like. This leads to a lot of limited student input into the service and amenity design and the improvements that we can make. So whilst we do have that average kind of trending response rate, we'd like to increase that so that we can really have student-led feedback that are designing our services and improvements. We also noticed there was quite a lot of awareness of what SSAF is and understanding of where SSAF funding is actually spent. So to addressing these would be able to lead us to a more proactive and predictive approach to our funding allocation, increase our students' awareness and trust around the SSAF process, increase student engagement and our response rates, and ultimately just maximise benefits for SSAF service and amenities that our students actually use. So what we focused on was an awareness campaign. So rather than just sticking with the traditional promotion of this is now open, please complete it, we spent some time designing in the couple of months leading into the survey what, where, and how. So what, why, and how. So our first one was around student language of what SSAF is, breaking that down. Then we moved on to why feedback mattered, and then how they could be involved in providing that feedback and how their feedback would actually impact service and amenity funding allocations. So we sat with the Student Guild board members, and we also had the Student Senate that provided input into this, and then we also worked with our student communications team as well. So the language became a lot more of that student-friendly tone rather than the more traditional formal language that really wasn't resonating with students. We had digital slides that would run on our visual media around campus, social media posts. We also had newsletter articles, and then we had flyers around campus as well. So we had a rolling couple ones there, and one of the things we wanted to make sure is that we've always got this funded by you, for you, SSAF supported logo that was on all of our SSAF funded activities. So this campaign rolled out over a couple months that really helped kind of raise that awareness of what SSAF is and why it was important prior to the survey actually opening, so that students actually had that little bit of awareness of, hey, my feedback is going to help design and implement funding allocations for services around the uni that I might be able to access. So on top of that, we also had some visual media with videos that we created as well. So we actually had our co-chairperson from our Learning and Teaching Student Representative Council had an interview with our Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic. That was around a 10 to 12 minute video, which got housed on our student portal and was linked out through our newsletter collateral as well. And then we had that short social meal reels, which were around that 60-second type of format as well. So that was with a student from our Student Guild board and also the co-chair from the Learning and Teaching Student Rep Council. We broke it down into bite-sized little 15-second reels that played as well, and then we also had the longer one that pieced them together, and that focused on that same thing as the collateral in the previous slide, which was the what is SSAF, why it is important, and how you can get involved and how your voice matters. So these rolled out alongside those media platforms on the previous slide with that 2 months in advance, and also rolled out during the phase that our actual survey was open as well. So in addition to this, we ran our SSAF survey in those first 3 weeks of August. We also set up a student voice activation on the ground as well. So in the past, it's been emails on different promotions around campus that the survey is open. This time we actually set up physical gazebos where we had our student reps come down on the ground talking to students. We had free food on offer because we find that is typically an incentive that students quite like. We all know they love the free food, particularly when times are hard right now. So we had our student reps talking to them about what SSAF is and why it was important. We had all of our videos actually there on iPads that they could watch. So we had our Students as Partners team and our Student Guild come down together and co-deliver these sessions. We ran these across all of our campuses as well. So it was helping to encourage students to actually complete the survey on the ground rather than relying on them, hopefully seeing one of many more emails that they tend to ignore. So I'll hand over to Emily to go through kind of the impacts of that.
So yeah, I guess in addition, just before we move on to the impacts, there was a few things that the Student Guild did. Just by virtue of being the guild and not being the university, we were able to do a little bit more cheeky campaigns about what is your SSAF being spent on, and this is your chance to have a say and kind of control where that's going. And at our Student Guild events, we would also have the iPads for people to do the survey there and then, as kind of this event right now is funded by SSAF and you are here enjoying it. You're already making use of SSAF. Just fill out the form, or here's a QR code while you're here, which I think makes a really big difference as opposed to an abstract email that might not resonate or connect with what students are actually doing that has to do with SSAF. So part of the impacts of all of these little small but like significant changes, we found that there was an increase in how students understood SSAF, the purpose of SSAF, and what SSAF is used for, but it's still not there where we would like it to be. The majority of students still don't really understand what SSAF is, the things that are funded by SSAF and what they're benefiting from when SSAF is spent on things at the university. So while we did see an increase in those campaigns of what SSAF is, why it's important, we still have a long way to go, I think. And we're looking at a number of things to increase that awareness of SSAF at our university. We did also have in 2025 the highest survey intake. I know Bella set a goal of having 1,000 students fill out the survey, and she got really, really close at 745. So we're really proud of how it's increased over the years, especially the jump from 2024 to 2025. And we are still a small university, but we are hoping to easily knock 1,000 out this year with the changes that we're going to make. So we've been working together, Student Guild, Students as Partners, and the students in general, to make small changes over the next couple of years. It's kind of a multi-year plan, so that we can see both a greater understanding and awareness and also a greater response rate in the survey and greater use of the survey. There's no point in running a survey that has meaningless data. Our survey is used primarily at the moment to inform SSAF applicants. So the survey results are released to people who are putting in a SSAF application, so that we as the Guild, for example, can see, oh, these are the things that are important to students. These are the things that they know about. These are the things that they use. And then hopefully my grant application, when I send it to the SSAF advisory committee, will be really strong because it aligns with what students want. And the next purpose for that is for the SSAF advisory committee to understand these are the things that students want. We can assess these applications in conjunction with what we know from the SSAF survey. So that is kind of what the SSAF survey is used for. I would say prior, and Belinda would be able to speak to this, prior to 2025, there were questions in there like, do you have any, or are there any improvements that the Student Guild can make? And a student might respond, no, but I don't know what that no is about. Is that because the Student Guild is doing everything perfectly? Is that because they just don't have any ideas? Is that because they don't use the Student Guild? So that no answer doesn't actually give me meaningful information. So we want to make sure that the survey can be compared year to year, but also that it's actually useful for the purpose. And it's not just a tick box that we're doing because the government told us that we need to consult students. So some of the plans for improving in the future, the first one is to co-design a campaign with students, improve the voice activation and service point of delivery activities. So we're hoping that that will increase the response rate. If students are actively involved in the co-design, they will hopefully respond and they'll trust that the funding is being used responsibly and for what they want. It's putting students back It's that nothing about us without us kind of motto. Next one is to streamline the survey to allow completion to be completed within 5 minutes. I think right now students it takes about 20 minutes. Students have to scroll through 60 pages, and this is the streamlined version of it from last year. So they're doing it on their phone, they're scrolling through, it's taking a lot of time, they give up halfway through. Some of the, I think Bella, is at UQ that has a really high response rate, and it's because it's a 2 to 3 minute survey. Like, I see that as a really big factor in a response rate improving. We would also like to introduce focus groups. So we're not just basing it on the survey. We're looking at the students who are engaged in giving this response and engaged in having a say where SAF goes, or student groups that it would particularly impact. So there might be particular cohorts where SAF is used in greater numbers, and using a kind of model of this survey that goes out to all students, but also focus groups, both in the design and in like kind of getting responses about what SAF is used for. And that doesn't have to be at a particular time of year. Focus groups can be used all through the year. So a lot of the conversations we have about when do we do the SAF survey and will that impact the response rate or not, focus groups can be used rolling throughout the year, or they can be used at any time of the year. Another one is introducing opinion polls and digital feedbacks at point of delivery. So, I mean, I think we've all seen those. Are you happy with this service? 1 to 5. Yes or no? Those very quick, press a button, tell us how we're doing, especially like those top 5 SAF priorities, I think will close the feedback loop a little bit on, we provided this with SAF. Was it a good choice, or is it not going the way that we had hoped? And it couldn't allow us to adjust our SAF delivery. If we provide a large proportion of SAF to careers and employability or food subsidies, and then students say, actually, this is not good, we don't like it, we can then adjust it throughout the year and be like, the SAF advisory committee can choose to pull back or give more SAF where it's going well. Targeted campaigns for underrepresented cohorts will provide us with a more diverse response rate. I think we probably last year had a great diversity in response rate just because we hit students at multiple points. We hit them at every campus. There was pop-ups. We had an iPad for students to fill it out there and then. We had QR codes ready to go. We had free food, which people love. We hit people when they were already engaging in SAF funded activities. It went out on social media, it went out on newsletters, it was on digital screens. It targeted everybody, but we know that there are underrepresented cohorts, and there are cohorts that also use SAF in larger numbers than others, and so we really want to increase the engagement from those cohorts. The next one would be student created awareness reels. I think Bella really explained that those 15-second short videos engage students. They show a real student voice. It isn't just the Vice Chancellor or the DVCA talking about what SAF is in a really disconnected way. Those awareness reels can engage students who are already maybe accessing things for SAF that they didn't even know were SAF funded. Something that we're not super strong at the moment, I feel, is closing the loop with survey activities. So we get the survey every year, we compare it to the previous year, but we're not reporting back to the students what changes we made with SAF. So if we see an increase in the priority level for food or careers and employability, we're not then going back to the student population in our reporting and said, 40% of you said that this was important, up from 30% the year before. So we actually increased the funding in this area directly because of what you said. We're listening. We are taking action. This is important. This is meaningful. This is actually doing something. So I think that is something that's probably very easy to implement, and it will increase transparency of SAF funding, and then students have more trust in the fact that when they're completing a survey, it makes a difference, and that they do actually get a say that's meaningful. And the last one, I think I just saw maybe Paul post in the chat about prizes. Review our participation incentivization. So we do provide, I think it's a monetary, was it a voucher, Bella, last year? There was like a $50 voucher or something like that. You could win one of a number of $50 vouchers, but including things like student leadership points, which maybe aren't monetary, but you could go, we have a student leadership award point system at our university so that you can receive points for completing the survey, maybe having more impressive, fewer larger prizes. Instead of having, $50 vouchers available, there's just $3,000 prizes available. And I guess we're really keen to hear from other universities of what prizes and incentives you offer and whether you find that's effective or not. We'll just end with a couple of pictures of this was one of the examples of the student engagement and promotional activities. So we've done a few different things. We've had a question of the week the Guild has done before where it was just one question. It took you 2 minutes. You just had to say, what do you think about this? And it provided a lot of qualitative response, or rank this from 1 to 5 on a Likert scale. And it's just one question. It's not a whole survey. We don't need you to do anything else. Having an activation on the lawn where students are just walking past and you can say, hey, do you want to just write down your ideas, stick it on here? You end up with so many ideas, which is amazing, and a huge variety. But again, it's students, while we're doing these awareness campaigns, we can talk to students about actually the SSAF survey is coming out in 2 or 3 weeks. Like when it comes out, please look out for it in your email. Please have a look. This is exactly what it's about. It's about gathering ideas, listening to student voice, and things like that. The one down in the bottom picture was about putting a token, very much like your grilled choose your charity thing, but putting a token. How do you feel about this? A Likert scale, a physical Likert scale, basically on a scale of 1 to 5. How much do you use this service? How much do you understand about SSAF? And I think that physical interaction with students really raises awareness of what we're doing, and then it's memorable in their mind for 2 or 3 weeks later when they get the email that comes through that hopefully they open and then complete the survey.
We find these kind of activations really resonate with students in terms of, yes, they're very tech savvy and they spend a lot of time on their phones, but the amount of surveys and feedback we kind of gather via email is just overwhelming. And for them to be able to just grab a pen and a Post-it note and write something down, they actually gave a lot of feedback that they quite enjoyed doing that. And we've found little ways to still be able to capture demographic data. So we, for instance, like both the tokens and our Post-it notes are color-coded via the school they're in. We've moved again this year a step up in that we've now printed out coloured pieces of paper that they also write their year level, and they circle a little box in terms of, are they Indigenous or Pacifica? Are they an international student? So that we're actually capturing all of this data in like a 2-second circle while they can still just write their feedback and throw it on, instead of having to scan a QR code, take out their device, find some time, the connection's not working. It's just quick, simple, drop and go. So this is what will complement our survey for this year. We'll focus primarily on that quantitative data on our survey with like one open-ended question, and then our activation and our focus groups is where we'll really gather that more meaningful qualitative data as well. Any questions? I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, so thanks, Bella and Emily. That was a really fascinating conversation. Like I'm really quite fascinated by a few of the things that you're doing there. I'm wondering, just Bree and I will manage a Q&A session now. If anyone wants to raise hand to speak or put into the chat, I'm happy to kick off with a question, which is that we often think about needing clear air to do a survey or some sort of really important communication, but it seems like you're sort of adding this into sort of the fabric of what's happening on campus. So I'm wondering, sort of, have you seen sort of a real uptick in that? Have you seen people thinking about it in different ways, or?
I think anecdotally, I have seen when it's integrated into existing events or existing kind of life on campus, or existing experiences, I think there is more of an understanding of what SSAF is, and that could come naturally with the fact that there is a face-to-face interaction, and part of that interaction is explaining what SSAF is, so that the students are having a conversation either with a student rep or a staff member from Students as Partners or from the Student Guild at the time. So I do feel that there is more understanding of what SSAF is, and the fact that you're already using things that are SSAF funded. We used to get a lot of responses in the SSAF survey of like, oh, I wish there was a resume service, or I wish counselling was provided, or I wish there was emergency food provided with SSAF. And we're like, we do all of that stuff already. So there's a real lack of what is covered and what is provided at our university at all, I think, a lot of the time, which doesn't give us very meaningful data when we get a survey from someone who knows nothing about SSAF and then it's like, this would be really important to me. It's like, well, it's already there and I don't use any of this. It's like, well, why not? Why aren't you using it? So I think that is the benefit maybe of those, that integrated approach, is that we're getting responses and we're just educating students, but we're getting responses from people who are starting to understand a little bit more about SSAF, why it's important, what it's used for.
And that's what we're diving deeper on this year as well. So it's that SSAF branding of, funded by you, for you, on our services and events that are. It's, we've recently added to all of our email signatures, any of the departments that actually are SSAF funded, it's clear that this is SSAF funded. It's having more of that awareness on, did you know we offer all of these services? So our activations this year will actually include service awareness campaigns as well.
Thanks. Paul, you had a question.
Obviously, I'm not directly affected by this because obviously I have no students. We're part of the professional association, so I'm going to take the opportunity to be a bit provocative and ask: have people, as part of their surveying, asked students if there's things that they think are funded by SSAF that shouldn't be? For instance, I mean, I think there was some serious failings in the legislation, and the fact that universities can use SSAF funds to operate capital projects on things like libraries and study spaces, which they should just be doing as part of being a university, should never have been in the SSAF legislation. And I wondered if that is something that people are asking.
We don't have a provision for that in our survey, but I can't even remember what it was. Last year's SSAF, when we were sending out the SSAF surveys during that period, I put together like a series of 3 like memes that we put on the student. And again, I'm in the position that we can probably be, but a little bit more provocative. They were, for me, I wasn't scared to do it, but I did check with the university of like, am I going to get in trouble if I post this? Because they were kind of those kind of questions of like, do you understand what the university is doing with your money? That it's supposed to be spent on this and it's maybe being spent on this. And, I've, as the guild, been very vocal before about like, I think this is just a form of money laundering sometimes. And I've used a very provocative language like that with the university staff at times. So I'm not opposed to that approach. I think the guild and unions are in a unique position to maybe do that a little bit more. We have a great relationship with our university. So I did check before I posted things to be like, is this going to be okay? And I did get the go ahead to go with it. So it kind of been that bad. But I think that is, we should be allowing students to ask those kind of questions and honestly justifying in some cases why we are using SSAF. I think in our university that comes from the SSAF advisory committee, that there are 4 students on that committee, which is a fairly large percentage of that committee. I'd say it's at least maybe 30% of that committee. So they are able in that room to say, why is, and I know that they do, including our guild representative, why is money being spent on this? This isn't justified. This may have been something that we have traditionally funded for a really long time, but why are we continuing to fund this when it's not being utilized or it's only serving a very small amount of students? So I think maybe that's where those questions come in rather than at the wider student population.
And we kind of
Right.
frame it, I guess, also in a way of how important that certain services and activities are funded through SSAF, and we have like that option for them to say not important at all, not interested. So it doesn't really ask that, no, I don't want this funded, but it gives that little bit of which services no one has absolutely any interest in as well. And we're also looking at ways, I guess, on the flip side of that, to build that into that transparency of why things are funded, of yes, this is what's important to you, but also making students aware that there are other cohorts at this university that do need this service and many that you don't need. So it's being able to think of the wider community instead of just necessarily what each person on their own is interested in.
Great, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a speaking list forming. And I noticed that, Belinda, you asked a pretty technical question, which is how much time did it take you to collate and record the post-it notes in token colours? Brigida has a question in the chat for everyone around whether they've used anything at a point of SSAF fee payment, whether any institutions have tried to do a pulse question there. Kate, did you want to ask a question, sort of, and then we can answer Belinda's question in the response as well, if that's right?
Yeah, I do, but I just want to check, Bree, because you're co-facilitating. Do you want to jump in first, and then I'll follow up?
We're just going to mention the questions in the chat, and I've got another question which can be asked later.
You can ask it now.
My question was about how you mentioned underrepresented cohorts, and I believe and a lot of your positive engagement with SSAF with students was through the in-person boots on the ground student representatives. How do you communicate better or plan to communicate better with the online students who still have to pay amenity fees but don't obviously have access to that direct communication?
To be honest, yeah, we've kind of got ideas with promotion, but for us, it's actually trying to reach out to those who are online students, bring them into some kind of working group to co-design promotions that target and suit them. I think more often than not, a lot of us sit in the room and go, this would work really great. But for us, our main focus is, well, students need to tell us what works for them. So we want to actually get those online students in a room to go, well, these are our ideas, but what would work best for you? So that is a cohort that is very hard to get the feedback from because really you're only relying on online communications. So yeah, we're kind of trying to co-design that with them at the moment.
These online questions, should we go back to that?
In terms of the post-it notes too, they didn't, I think maybe in total it took a day to collate. There were probably 4 post-it notes out of the entire bunch that were illegible. The rest were fine, which was a little surprising that there weren't more. So yes, it was time consuming, I guess, to collate them, but the trade-off was I'd rather a staff member spend a day or two collating these than and get the feedback than have less responses that were actually meaningful data. I guess moving forward too, because this was a quite experimental way that we've done it, is I guess looking at AI supports that can help us with that in the future as well. I'm sure there's some out there. We just, I guess, didn't consider that process at the time-wise. So if anyone has used it for AI, please let me know.
Okay. Kate, did you still have a question? No? Okay.
No, because I think Ben, I want to hear from Ben because we might be
Okay.
similar.
All right. Shauna Lee.
Thanks, Fletcher. I was just going to respond to Paul's question a little bit more from University of Tasmania's TUSA perspective. So in terms of the survey, we review annually. We've got it down to 17 questions now, which is fine. All the usual kind of what are you aware and all of that. But in answer to your question, Paul, we've introduced a new category at the end, which is if you had $100, how would you split spending that $100 across all of these permissible categories? And so what that does is it gives us a really great way to see what people value the most, but also in answer to your question, what they don't. So it's just a different way of looking at it that seems to resonate with students.
Thanks for that. Ben, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, and I really love what you're doing at the Uni of Sunshine Coast, so thanks for that presentation. And a dilemma we face with our SSAF survey that I'm interested in other people's responses, and I don't think we've solved it, or we haven't solved it, is that SSAF funding has been going to a range of programs for a long time now, and so we've got a set of mature programs with staff, established practices, organisationally been around for a long time. So when we survey students and ask those programs to be ranked or ask students for their priorities, we do that knowing that our ability to make changes to that established set of programs is quite constrained. It's not like we're going to fire staff in one program and start up something new in response to a survey, like to put it in dramatic terms. So we are constrained by an established set of programs. And so then our surveys feel somewhat disingenuous, which I think is probably students sense that too, and possibly why we don't get great response rates. I manage the Student Association. For ourselves, with our 40% plus a bit, the approach we're taking is to work more because our programs are established too, and it's not like we're going to turn off the tap on one thing necessarily and start another thing overnight. So our approach is to work as closely as we can with our student council, consult with our broader student community around the evolution of those programs, which is a little bit different than ranking everything the way a survey generally does. So I think we find we're caught between a couple of historical things and a survey process that doesn't really work. And I'm just interested in if anyone else is facing that dilemma.
Thanks, Ben. Bella or Emily, if you wanted to comment, and maybe this is a good opportunity because I was going to jump in with a question around that co-design of service and amenity improvement aspect to your work and what that's looking like in terms of adding a little bit more than sort of ranking things.
I will say that I think our university is a little bit unique in the last couple of years because our guild was getting between 9 and 12%, and the university fully backed the change to 40% with the transition plan. But they did a full audit of what was being provided by SSAF, including things that kind of had been grandfathered in over the years. And they really ruthlessly assessed, does this even meet the guidelines for being SSAF funded? And is this what should be SSAF funded? And if yes, should it be delivered by the guild or should it be delivered by someone else? So we're kind of in a little bit of a uniquely different position, I think, because our university has been a little bit ruthless in saying to things that have been going for years, actually, this isn't SSAF funded anymore. If this is going to continue, you need to find external funding or it needs to be funded operationally. And our university, very thankfully for the guild, has fully backed the changes. And we've, as a guild, put our hand up and said, we can actually, this kind of fits in our objectives. we think that we can take this over. But I think that is a challenge. I can imagine that is a challenge for all universities. There are some things that are never going to change. They're always going to be funded by SSAF. Whether they should or shouldn't, or whether they bring value to the student and that student just doesn't realize what that value is, I think is going to be debatable. But I think it helps to have a panel of people that make that decision. Previously to our SSAF advisory committee who were deciding where SSAF goes, it was just the PBC students who was in charge of just saying yes or no to random applications throughout the year. So I think that that maybe has helped, and there has been some really hard decisions that have, like, there's hope, I think, for things that really shouldn't be SSAF funded to maybe not be SSAF funded as they, you know, fade out over a couple of years. But once students are getting something, it's very hard to take it away. So if students are getting a free meal and it's been funded by SSAF, or they're getting whatever it is else that they're actually using, once you give it to them, it's very, very difficult to suddenly take that away. So in our case, there has been some programs that there is a year or two during this transition period where SSAF grants recipients have been told, we're going to fund this for one more year. So you need to start phasing this out or work collaboratively with the Guild for them to pick it up. Yeah.
I'm conscious of time. So maybe, Melissa, your question, and then we'll have time for a short breakout to gather sort of, people have been asking questions in the chat about what everyone's been doing. So we'll have some time to sort of record some of that information, but take it away, Melissa.
Thanks, Fletcher. So my name is Mel Zaccanini. I'm from the University of Wollongong, and in a way, it's a little bit of a response to Paul's question and Ben's, so sharing our experience. In terms of your question around how do we know what students don't want their SSAFs, I really just wanted to reinforce that comment around, we do use our SSAF survey, but we have a 13-member student SSAF subcommittee, and all of our project proposals, every single one we receive goes through that 13-member council. We do have one of them on the call today, Alex, so big shout out to him. But they've been very, very vocal in terms of where they felt SSAF should and shouldn't be placed, and their recommendations go directly to our DBCE and VPO. I do want to give everyone a little bit of hope in that the last couple of years we have seen a pretty substantial shift in acknowledgement of that feedback, and we've got a couple of things that have transitioned off of SSAF. And look, there's work to be done, and I'm sure they'll continue that work, but it is great to see. The other question with the historically locked up SSAF funds, I just wanted to share that back in 2024, UOW's SSAF funds were entirely locked. Submissions were only by invitation. So we really were seeing a situation where the university was only taking through and funding projects that were invited to submit. And so the SSAF survey, like was just described, was really quite tokenistic, because we were only asking students to comment on things that were already going to be funded. So we've had a really radical shift in the last 12 to 18 months. So for the last 3 rounds, we've done open funding rounds. And that was a huge kind of call out. We weren't sure what was going to happen, but what it has also meant is the survey process alongside that is traveling together. And so the survey is becoming much more authentic because it is actually starting to drive the prioritization processes. But also we're seeing some really interesting SSAF projects being promoted, and people are putting in their funding rounds. So if anyone was in that similar situation, I think it is an interesting case, Ben, where we had a really quite a locked up system. It was really quite difficult, but we have gone almost the complete other way. So yeah, good for you to know that there's others out there, but we have done a lot of work in that space.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Melissa. I think maybe at this point, I want to thank our panelists today from the University of Sunshine Coast, Emily and Bella, on their presentation on communication. It's been absolutely fantastic. Belinda, I'm conscious of the time, and we've probably run over with the Q&A. So I'm wondering if we just open up the Padlets and the breakout rooms maybe for 5 or 6 minutes for people to just chat and then see what the questions are and sort of answer questions in their own time. Is that
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, our plan was to have a little bit of a longer breakout, but we had some great Q&A, and I think that was really beneficial for everyone. So yeah, Fletcher and Bree have got some guiding questions here on the Padlet. We'll leave the Padlet open after as well. So we'd love you to like continue after today's session to fill that out. And what I might do is if you have the capacity and time to join a breakout room, have a more intimate discussion, please do. And I won't close them. Do you think, Fletcher, I won't bring everyone back if we just kind of close now. So if you have time to stay on the line and have a good chat, like I can just leave the meeting open. Are you happy with that, Fletcher? Just to
Bree, does that sound okay to you?
Sound great. Let's do it.
if people have time and you want to hang around, that would be amazing. But I can see, as sometimes happens when you announce breakouts, people start to drop off. And I just want to say a big thanks to Fletcher and Bree for putting their hand up to co-convene the session. There is a question on the Padlet about, you know, what topics you really want to lean into for future ones. So we've got some suggestions, but would love your feedback on that. And if you would like to present at a future session, we'd also love to hear from you. So I will open up the breakout rooms now. Load in.
Thanks, Belinda.
Oh, should be open. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.